boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerdy through a common sense lens. And well, ladies and gentlemen, it turns out after the review embargo was finally lifted with just in a few days of the movie coming out, it turns out the critics enjoy the movie as much as the audiences expect to, ladies and gentlemen, and that is absolutely abysmally bad. Things are not looking good. Even the critics cannot hide their ire for this movie after years of controversy, all of the backlash against Rachel Zegler for all of the ridiculous things she said, for the weird, and then of course the absolute meltdowns post-election. Things have just not been going very well from a PR perspective whatsoever. And then you saw the abomination that is the CGI dwarfs that were absolutely terrifying. And now it looks like, boys and girls, even the access media, even the shills out there can no longer push the BS of this movie. They cannot hide it. The Rotten Tomatoes score is absolutely abysmal. And ladies and gentlemen, even the Hollywood Reporter has to admit that the critics are not happy about things in any way, shape, or form, because we've got the article over here from the Hollywood Reporter, which of course does not give a headline that of course is bashing the entire thing, because they know most people don't get past the headlines. But boy, once you dig into some of the curated reviews that they've got, plus when you go over here to check out some of the reviews from the Rotten Tomatoes itself, things are abysmally bad, ladies and gentlemen. It's not even close. And of course, how far the attitudes have changed from the Walt Disney Company from just 12 years ago when they were talking about and promoting some of the older Snow White stuff out there. Wow, how things have changed. And even though Disney knows this thing was going to be an absolute abysmal dumpster fire, even I don't think they were going to be, I don't even think they were going to think the critic score was going to be as abysmally as bad as what it is. So we're going to check out this article from the Hollywood Reporter, highlight some of these absolute abysmal ratings, and of course give you an idea of why it got the score it did. And of course a friendly little throwback as to what Disney's history used to be about Snow White as well. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 1,600. We're almost to 1,700, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Did it surprise you at all that the critics are actually being honest about this movie, and how much of an abysmal failure is it going to be out there? Are you planning on going to see this movie despite the critics and despite what so many of the other people out there say? Or is this something you're going to avoid like the Black Plague, like so many other people out there? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. Alrighty, from the Hollywood Reporter and Carly Thompson, Snow White, what the critics are saying. Lord be with me. The live-action adaptation of the 1937 Disney animated classic stars Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot and hits on Friday. And you know what's funny about this too is when we get into the description, the Hollywood Reporter, I'm pretty sure, was the one that was running cover for this movie just a couple of weeks ago, and also the ones that completely and totally admitted all of the controversy surrounding the dwarves. Guess what they don't admit this time? Although, of course, not to the extent that we would all like to see it. So ahead of the wide release of Disney's Snow White, the film's first reviews from critics have been rolling in on Wednesday, and they've been decidedly mixed. Yeah, that's an understatement. Some would argue to say that they are absolutely abysmal, boys and girls. Directed by Mark Webb, the live-action adaptation of the 1937 Disney animated classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which, mind you, was Disney's first full-length feature film out there and literally saved the company from bankruptcy, right? Like, literally, this movie, the original movie, is the only reason the Disney Company currently exists in its form it is. You'd think they'd want to show a little bit more respect, but oh no, that didn't happen over at the Walt Disney Company, did it? Thanks, Bob Iger. See, Snow White joined forces with seven dwarves to liberate her kingdom from the cruel stepmother, the evil queen. Yes, boys and girls, that's right. She's a man of the people. She's out there fighting the good fight. She's going to start a revolution against the evil queen, of course, and not be saved from her lumbering slumber or any of the prince stuff. No. Couldn't have any of that. Boy, I wonder why nobody's interested in this film. For years, the film has been under fire for a combination of controversies, including Zegler's casting and her opinionated remarks about the original animated film. Weird. Prince Charming's kind of a stalker because it's weird. And it's so outdated. It's just so of its time. The star also drew heat for her hostile reaction to Donald Trump's re-election, which of course she said she hopes that anybody that voted for Donald Trump or any of his supporters out there never know peace. And of course she later apologized in an extremely sanitized corporate speak, obviously forced on her by her PR team and people over there at Disney, who we know Disney chiefs were frustrated with Zegler because they couldn't control her and they couldn't keep her activist mouth shut. But hey, that's what happens when you hire somebody that's completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age. So yeah, that apology was a complete and total joke. And then of course her pro-Palestinian stance, which didn't help anything either, especially considering the fact that her co-star Gal Gadot is an Israeli citizen. Yeah, that didn't work out very well, did it? People on social media have also attempted to paint a feuding narrative between Zegler and Gadot. And honestly, if you saw them at the Oscars and Rachel Zegler stomping on stage like an angry 12-year-old with that, so happy to be here, that forced smile and that nasty, ugly look on her face the entire time she was standing next to Gal Gadot, yeah, pretty obvious. At least Zegler can't absolutely despises Gal Gadot. Whereas at least Gal Gadot seemed to keep her pose, seemed to keep her form, and other than maybe looking a little bit of a forced smile, other than that, looked absolutely gorgeous and stunning at the Oscars. So needless to say, yeah, I think all of that's true. The latter of which has spoken out against anti-Semitism and advocated for the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza. Obviously talking about Gal Gadot, and obviously we've seen all of the pro-Palestinian stuff that Rachel Zegler has posted out there. I'm sure she loves Gal Gadot. As of Wednesday afternoon, Snow White had a score of 48% from 80 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and clocked in at a 47% on Metacritic from 37 reviews. Yes, boys and girls, whether it be Metacritic or whether it be Rotten Tomatoes, this thing has scored an absolute F-, and it's not even close. I mean, this is abysmally bad, and it hasn't gotten any better since The Hollywood Reporter wrote this article. It is now at 106 reviews with a 47%. Obviously, audience score isn't going to be out just yet, but needless to say, I can't wait to see what that one looks like on Monday. So what are some of the things out there? And then, of course, let's just go ahead and throw this out there right now. This is from the Walt Disney Company, December 30th, 2012. Now, I don't know if this was because of like a re-release of Snow White on like DVD or Blu-ray or something like that as to why they were doing this, but needless to say, remember, this is the original description of Snow White. Lips red as the rose, hair as black as ebony, skin white as snow. Hashtag Snow White. And shout out to Fandom Pulse for pointing out things certainly have changed in 13 years at Disney. Boy, you think, ladies and gentlemen, you think. So, of course, they go through the grass and all of that kind of stuff as well. Ooh, did they not mention the release of the dwarves? Did they not release the release of the dwarves? Here we go. Maybe it's probably one of the reviewers that actually remembers it, because, of course, they're not going to talk about it. The Hollywood Reporter won't. So, of course, Hollywood Reporters, none of the background noise matters, and Mark Webb's vibrant retelling, yada, yada, yada. It was fabulous. The desires expressed with passionate feeling, waiting on a wish, standout new songs, yada, 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 yada. Reshapes the story about a princess dreaming of her knight in charming armor into one where she finds the courage to be a leader, capable of following in her noble father's footsteps. Yes, boys and girls, she's whamming power all the way, and she's, of course, going to be the bestest at absolutely everything. IndieWire says it doesn't always fit seamlessly together, but it's far more entertaining than might lead us on. Spirited and sweet tone, yada, yada, yada. Mostly it's a reminder that's actually worth considering and critiquing the final product. This one is good. So like I said, these are all curated by the Hollywood Reporter. Don't worry, we're going to get to the Rotten Tomatoes ones here in a second. The Guardian wrote in his review, here's a pointless new live-action musical version of Snow White myth. A kind of unwicked approach to the story and a merch-enabling money machine. Which, of course, any of us that have paid attention to what's going on in Ollie's knows that that's exactly where all the merch from this live-action abomination of Snow White is going to end up. Where other movies are playfully reimagining the backstories of famous villains, this one plays it straight, but with carefully curated revisionist tweaks. Obviously, the fact that, anybody that is trying to convince you that Rachel Zegler is somehow fairer than Gal Gadot, yeah, not so much. These are all too obviously agonizing and backlashing second guessing, but knowing that at some basic level, the brand identity has been kept pristine. This is particularly evident in the costume design. And remember this, at some basic level, the brand identity has to be kept pristine. This is particularly evident in the costume design, while with which Wicked Witch gets a pointy dark crown and a skull-hugging black blavaka, and Snow White is lumbered with a supermarket retail tweenie outfit with puffy sleeved shoulders. I mean, seriously, did you see any of the memes comparing her to the white outfit to Lord Farquaad from Shrek? I mean, literally, the resemblance was undeniable. All of the costume people outside of who was designing stuff for maybe Gal Gadot's character, the evil wit queen, right, literally should all be fired. All of the outfits for Snow White look abysmal. You could have got a better Snow White outfit at Spirits or Walmart or probably a second-hand shop. It looked atrocious. Those otherwise estimable performers, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, are now forced to go through the motions as they give the dullest performance of their lives, because of course they don't want to talk about how insufferable and how much of a poor actress Rachel Zegler actually is, boys and girls, and she's certainly not any draw. So they go through all of this as well. They kind of try this one right here from the Wall Street Journal, because try to critique the original a little bit. Version 2.0, starring Rachel Zegler in the title role and Gal Gadot as her nefarious stepmother, has been in the works since 2016 and already feels like it's from a bygone era. After fans seemed grumpy about the rumored storyline and the casting of Miss Zegler, Disney became bashful about releasing it until March in order to reshoots to make everyone happy. Unfortunately, the story is so dopey it made me sleepy, and you're going to notice that as a consistent thing going on throughout this entire thing. There are many people who talk about this fact. It's being absolutely boring and all of this kind of stuff. This person right here, obviously Alison Wilmore, doesn't like the live action remakes at all. She's the bar is so low. What people seem to want from them: a tickle of nostalgia, the familiar rendered now new on a technicality, 109 minutes of child-friendly distraction. Feels so different from the usual standards. Snow White is not as bad as it could be while not being anywhere near as good. It's better than, say, Aladdin, which was awful, and I agree with that, but nevertheless made a literal billions of dollars, which obviously this one is not going to make. Literally, we're talking at best $100 million global box office weekend, right? When the reports going out there of this movie costing anywhere from $250 to $300 million, and considering all the reshoots, probably closer to $400 million, this movie has to make $1 billion globally in order to even come close to sniffing a profit. That is not going to happen with $100 million box office in weekend. Remember, a good drop is 50% weekend over weekend. More often than not, it's a 60 to 70% drop. There is no way this movie can even sniff $300 to $400 million, let alone the $1 billion globally it would have to be made to make a profit. And of course, Disney knows that. We've heard this from all of the insiders. We know that they are not happy with this movie. They know that Rachel Zegler is completely out of control. And guess what? It's not just all of the curated high-end folks out there that, of course, the Hollywood Reporter likes to highlight. No. We've got this guy who's from YouTube, but apparently qualified for it to be considered a critic over there at Rotten Tomatoes. The only positive outcome for Snow White, Disney's live-action reimagining of its classic animated catalog, would be if it inspired a moratorium on such blatant consumerist film studio pursuits. Yes, he wants this to be the death nail of live-action remakes. And honestly, considering what they've been doing over the last few years, can anyone really blame them? Here's this one. The most cursed project of the year turns out to be pretty good, actually. This one was a good score right here. Some of the ones that are quote-unquote positive scores don't sound so positive when we get to them. This one right here, Movies and Shakes. Rachel Zegler can do it all and fills the bill. Oh, really? We wanted Gal Gadot's witch more multidimensional and less garish. Does this new imagining supply the magic we were wishing for? Mirror, mirror on the wall. This might not be the best Snow White of all, and considering how many remakes there have been over the years, that's really saying someone. This film revels in its smaller pleasures, but somehow they got a positive 3 out of 4 score. This one's great right here. Disney, remember, this is a positive score. See that shiny little tomato over there? Positive score. When you got Disney Snow White continues the trend of bland Disney remakes. This barely gets a pass for the brisk pacing, the entertainment values, and the 2 leads. The CGI dwarves are stuff of nightmares, though. And that's something that was even mentioned in one of the Hollywood Reporter critiques out there as well. And they were like, look, like they could have just hired actual dwarves. They decided not to. It was a big back and forth, and then they ended up giving us these CGI abominations that, like, the pores are way too obvious on them. There's way too many plants. Like, the CGI just looks overdone. This guy, even with saying that it's bland Disney remakes, barely gets a pass. Still gives it a positive Rotten Tomato score and gives it a 7 out of 10. I wonder if Lee McCoy used to work for IGN. I don't know. Here's another one. There's nothing particularly controversial here, but it's still pretty dull of a redo as of often too often of a filmed tale. I don't know. I guess basically too much of a Snow White, too many Snow Whites out there, but pretty dull, right? This is consistent with the whole sleepy thing. Here's another one right here. Snow, and this one doesn't even make sure that their spelling is accurate. Now White versus Snow White, which is actually kind of whole funny about the Rachel Zegler controversy, but needless to say, Snow White tries to achieve a lot, but while the leading ladies try to represent strong female characters, strong women power, the film's creative objectives do not complement each other cohesively, marking another miss among Disney's live-action adaptations. Director Mark Webb manages a balance between Snow White's new and old elements, but despite Rachel Zegler's impressive vocal abilities, oh really? Because I heard some of that, some lively choreography and vibrant set design, the result is more ho-hum than hi-ho. Then why did you give it a 3 out of 5, Richard? Oh, that's right. You're trying to game the Rotten Tomatoes system, so that way it's not as bad as what it truly actually should be. But even then, where are we at? Even with all this shilling, still a 47%. That is probably the worst, if not the absolute one of the worst, if not the worst of all of the live action remakes. I'm not going to bother going through all the history of every single one of them that Disney's made out there, but I guarantee this is probably one of the lowest. Here's another one. It's a shame that there's been so much controversy surrounding Snow White, as Mark Webb's harmless musical is hardly strong or memorable enough to warrant the reaction its detractors have already decided it deserves. Well, of course, this guy probably doesn't want to admit the fact that the reason why all the detractors are mad is because of all of the dumb things that come out of Rachel Zegler's mouth. But needless to say, it's an absolute failure. It just goes worse and worse and worse from down here. This one is really funny as well. This terrific thing about Snow White 2.0 is that while they've updated the tale a bit to make our princess a more proactive character, women power, they haven't really altered the essence all that much, with many images and them themes echoing the original. 3.5 out of 5. This one from Punch Drunk Critics. It's not quite fairest of them all, but hardly a poisonous apple either. 3 out of 5. Literally almost a 50%. This one I love. From the top critic over there at Boston Globe. Yes, top critic, boys and girls, which we don't have a top critic score yet. Why are they hiding that? Probably because it's even worse than what an all critic score would be right now, because the all critics include all of the paid access media shills for the Walt Disney Company and the rest of Hollywood. But here's from the Boston Globe. Somebody actually gets paid by an independent company to do this. I had high hopes that Snow White would make me happy. Instead, this dopey remake makes me sleepy and grumpy. Yes, boys and girls, I think considering the critics' overall score of 47%, yes, a big fat F minus, ladies and gentlemen, makes that very obvious. This is what we mean by what is woke. Right? What is woke? This is what we mean by it. This is what happens when you put identity politics over good storytelling and something that is believable to the audience. And we know what happens when you go broke. When you go woke, you go broke. And that's exactly what's going to happen. This movie already has best estimates $100,000 global opening, which means is a guaranteed death nail for this movie. And even the critics, even the access media shills, the ones whose their whole livelihood depends on getting inside information from inside of these Hollywood studios, even they cannot lie about this movie anymore. A 47% from the critics, from all critics, not even top critics, which I like to highlight sometimes because they're generally a little more honest than the shills. Even all critics, with all the shills included, couldn't get this thing above 50%, considering every single trailer from this movie has been ratioed into oblivion. The best thing that has come out of this movie is the wonderful little AI videos reading off all of the comments. This movie is going to be an abysmal failure, and even the critics, they cannot lie anymore. Disney's live-action Snow White version out there starring the beautiful and wonderful Gal Gadot and the weird Rachel Zegler is going to fail miserably, and even the critics cannot lie about what an abysmal failure is. This is what happens when you prioritize identity politics over good storytelling, and then you let an actress who is completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age go out there and run her mouth and say the most abysmal, nasty thing she can say, not only about the original classic that literally saved the Walt Disney Company, but also a bunch of politics stuff that she's too dumb and is not well versed in the world enough to have any kind of idea about. She's literally just spewing talking points from the Spirit of the Age. And now the backlash from that and all of the bashing of the original out there has given Disney exactly what it's deserved. After all, you're the ones that decided to go down this path. You're the ones that decided to race swap characters, and now you are getting exactly what you deserve. This movie is going to be a disastrous dumpster fire at the box office, cost the Walt Disney Company hundreds of millions of dollars once again, exactly as they deserve, and even the critics cannot lie about how bad the Disney's live-action Snow White version is. And boys and girls, I don't know about you, things sure seem to be changing, but if nothing else, it sure is weird.